Hello and welcome back to another video, today here again on Forza Horizon 5, with my honest opinions on the Rally expansion, having played it for a few weeks now since the release. Probably putting in at least 12 hours of playtime on the new map, including completing the campaign as well as all of the challenges and accolades. Let's start with the map itself then, which is, as I thought, quite similar to the mainland, and as it turns out, quite incredibly tiny. However, it doesn't feel tiny. Unlike the vast empty mainland, it's densely packed with brilliant twisty roads and lots of points of interest. In fact, it manages to get all of the interesting bits from the mainland into a map less than a quarter of a size, it feels like. The twisty, tighter roads also make distances feel further than they are, and therefore the map feels bigger when you're actually playing it. The quarry and the new town are both incredible landmarks, with both of them looking great for minigames such as hide and seek and things like that, which was great in Horizon 4's quarry as well. I feel like it's almost better than the mainland actually, parts of it certainly are. I really hope this is a sign of what is to come in Forza Horizon 6, but filling a whole map with similar density of these great roads and points of interest, and roads that are actually slightly narrower and better to drive. In fact, I think the map is the best thing about this expansion, and, well, everything else I'm going to say is kind of downhill from there. The campaign is incredibly short, only 6 hours to complete at a relaxed pace, so it could probably be done in about 4 if you really tried. It's not really long enough, if I'm honest, being far shorter than even the Hot Wheels campaign at that length. It consists of 3 teams, that aren't really teams, that you must play through. So basically the 3 different types of racing. Horizon Raptors, run by Alex, which is essentially dirt racing, I think. Apex Predators, run by Alejandra, which is essentially the road racing. And Grit Reapers, run by Rami, which is essentially street racing. No kind of cross-country stuff, which is kind of interesting given the cars they put in here, which we'll get onto in a minute. But yeah, they are essentially dirt, road, and street racing, respectively. There are 8 races plus the final head-to-head for each, finishing after you've done all of those, of course, with the Goliath. So, in fact, it adds up to only 28 race routes in total, and none of them are circuits, not even the Goliath. Which means, in Forza terms, the Goliath isn't really a true Goliath at all. For one, like I say, it's a sprint, not a circuit, but it also doesn't really go around the full map, and has not only tarmac and dirt sections, but also full-on cross-country parts. And it's not like they couldn't have done it. There is a tarmac road that would essentially go all the way round, if they had wanted to do it as a circuit, and make a proper Goliath. But anyway, it's not a bad race, and it incorporates some of the best roads in the expansion, particularly the canyony ones, but it's not really a true Goliath, and it does go cross-country, which is quite irritating. Although, to be fair, none of the other races do, so yeah, I don't know, but it doesn't really feel like a proper Goliath, and therefore every route on the expansion is a sprint, which I suppose, given it's a rally-themed expansion, does kind of make sense. That tends to be how rallies are run, of course, but a few circuits would have been nice, but I guess we'll have to make our own in Event Lab, although on first kind of look at the map, to find where starting points could be for that, there aren't really many race routes that have good starting locations that would work well to create a route from. They always seem to put them kind of on junctions, and it means you can't really come back to it because of how the start-finish line works. Anyway, what about after the Goliath? Well, there are, of course, then many small challenges to complete associated with the 3 teams. For example, each actual race event is available as a rally or a race. You can complete the campaign with any combination of the 2, but there then is a challenge to complete all of each type. So if you've done the campaign all as rallies, you'll have to go and do the events as races if you really want to 100% it, or vice versa. And, well, if you've done any mixture, you'll then have to go back to the events you've done as one and do them as the other if you really want to finish them. Like the Hot Wheels expansion, annoyingly these challenges remain pinned to the screen until you do them. You can unpin them, but every time you start the game they seem to come back again, or every so often when you're driving about they just pop up randomly, which is really irritating. There should at least be an option to turn them off, I feel like. If you do finally try to do them, though, you find they're very, very easy, actually. They're just kind of time-consuming and annoying. For example, some get you to complete a certain stage in a certain class of car within a certain time. but without driving particularly well, I seem to be beating those by up to about 40 seconds, which, if they're going to be challenges to do post-campaign, I feel like they should be challenging, but they should also be more optional and not pinned there until you do them. So they're kind of there if you want a challenge, but not forced upon you and just plain irritating to complete. A few of them are quite fun, however, like one that makes you achieve air skills in an event in a Halo Warthog, therefore making you use it in an event, which is something I would never do myself if not asked to, which you guys probably wouldn't either. Although, to be honest, it's probably just Microsoft trying to advertise Halo. But anyway, these challenges all seem to have a corresponding accolade as well, and once you complete all of them, there is one more accolade associated to the expansion to do 25 miles in any Horizon Tour event on the expansion, which I have now also completed. So there are a few bits and pieces to do after you've done the campaign, but all of them are quite easy, and you kind of have to do them to get rid of the irritating pins. So, the cars. In my mind, probably the worst bit about the expansion. I'm still disappointed that there are only 2 actual cars, and I use the term cars loosely. There's only one rally car in this rally expansion, which is just ridiculous, to be honest. That car, of course, being the brilliant Colin McRae Ford Focus rally car, which I've absolutely loved driving. Somehow Forza thinks I've done 4,000 miles in it, which I don't think is quite right. But anyway, and the second car is the Ford Lightning truck, with the remaining 8 vehicles being stupid buggies. I do wonder if this is just fill-in, as like back in the LEGO expansion, for example, on Horizon 4, everyone complained that there weren't 10 vehicles. So I kind of feel like they didn't really have many vehicles to put in, so they thought they would just fill the gap with buggies, some of them being very similar to things we already have in the base game. So yeah, this time they've corrected that by filling it with buggies that nobody wants, because we already have loads of them, and to be honest, most players, including myself, don't really know much about them. I just can't help feeling it would have been easy enough to include at least one more rally car, or a road-going homologation version of a rally car, like the GR Yaris, for example, or I'm sure there's loads of Subarus and Evos that we don't have in the game. I just feel like something like that would have made more sense if it's a rally expansion. If they had called it a Baja expansion or something, fair enough, the buggies would make sense. I wouldn't necessarily have enjoyed it as much, but yeah, I feel like if it's rally-themed, we needed more than one rally car. Having said that though, myself and fellow Forza YouTubist, Fail, have driven a couple of them in a challenge recently. Video on that coming soon on both channels, but we were pleasantly surprised by how fun they were, although we didn't really know much about them, and I think we still came to the conclusion and were of the opinion of that if it's a rally expansion, it shouldn't be full of buggies. After all, Forza is quite buggy enough as it is without them adding more of them. Another point, not necessarily a good or bad thing, but I did find it quite interesting that both the cars I actually find interesting, the Focus Rally Car and the Lightning, are of course Fords. I just wonder if Ford paid anything for this. Anyway, as for the new customization options, there are many new rally modifications. I'll put a full list of cars that have new rally mods on the screen somewhere here. But these, though, were added alongside the expansion and aren't actually really part of it. They're available to anyone who owns any version of the game, so they're basically in the base game as well, even if you don't buy the expansion. So if you haven't got the expansion, you can still, of course, make use of them. A few of the cars on the list you might not expect that I find quite interesting. I like it when they add things to something a little bit alternative, like the Subaru BRZ is in there, and my favourite one with rally mods, the Alpine A110, although the mods it gets aren't as good as the ones on some of the other cars. So just be aware the cars on this list do all get a slightly different combination of options, so not every bash bar and light option is available on all the cars on this list. There are also some tyre profile size options on a list of different 4x4s and pickup trucks. Again, this is available to everyone who has the base game, and I'll list the vehicles that have that option on screen somewhere here. But again, be aware they won't all have all 3 tyre options like the Ram that I showed on screen here does. Some of them have 2, some of them have 1, and some of them, for some reason, this option's only available on the front or rear. Anyway, One other small feature that they made a big deal out of, and everyone is going crazy for some reason, is the anti-lag, which is kind of cool, but really just making a car pop flames is a big deal to add. And again, it's included with the update whether you had the expansion or not. So although kind of advertised as part of the expansion, it isn't. I don't think they ever straight up said it was part of the expansion, but it was shown in the trailer, it was shown when they showed off the expansion, and then they later said it would be available to everybody. I think they did kind of make that clear, but it was shown off in the trailer and stuff before then. So yeah, it's kind of cool to have, but for one, Gran Turismo has had it for a year since it came out, and to be honest, they did it better. It's not in as a turbo option, it's in as an easy. It's kind of more accurate, and the flames look better and they don't pop ridiculously. And yeah, so they've had it for a while, and to be honest, they did it better. And it shouldn't really have been put in the trailers and stuff, and kind of sold as part of the expansion when it wasn't. I know they did kind of clear up that it wasn't, and they said it would be available to everybody, but yeah, it's one of the few things that came out with this expansion, and it's not really part of it. Anyway, the same also goes for the new Rally Bash bars and lights. It is great to have them and for them to be available to everybody, but they shouldn't really have sold them as part of the expansion if they're not exclusive to that. In fact, as they aren't part of the expansion and are free to everyone, it kind of means effectively for the expansion we've paid for a map and only 2 vehicles that I'm interested in. So yeah, it's kind of feels like you're paying a lot for not much content. You get a really cool map, which like I say is the best bit of it, 2 cool cars, but that's about it. Having said that, the other side of the argument is that there's more free content for everyone else, but having paid for the version of the game with 2 expansions, I kind of want some exclusive stuff and to get something for my money. One thing they did advertise as part of the expansion, which is exclusive to the expansion, is the return of split times, which they advertised as a new feature despite it being in previous titles and then being removed, which again is quite a common theme with Forza these days. But yeah, a lot of people were very excited to see split times were coming back, but we were all a little bit skeptical about it, and rightly so, because as it turns out they are just limited to the rally events, which is ridiculous, and hopefully at some point it does come to the other events, but I don't hold out much hope for that. One thing I have noticed is the lack of a new barn find in this expansion. I know this is also true of Hot Wheels, but neither of them have had a barn find, which is a bit of a shame. Even Horizon 4 had one in both expansions, even in LEGO, albeit an afterthought far too late after release, but they did both have one. I just really hope the lack of barn finds in Horizon 5's expansions doesn't mean they're going to remove them completely in Horizon 6, because it's been in the series since the first game, and it would just be a real shame, and I would miss them if they were to disappear at this point. If you play on Xbox, feel free to skip this next chapter, because it doesn't really apply to you. On PC, or on some PCs, there's a glitch with GPU utilization, and it means you get low frame rates with one particular, well, it seemed like with one particular graphics setting. But essentially, at the start of races, and if you go into the sandy, deserty bit with the deformable sand, your frame rate will drop to essentially a slideshow from whatever you have it at, even if you've got it at super high frames. One theory was that it was down to deformable terrain, which if set to extreme caused the problem and made your GPU only work at 10 or 20% utilization. With this turned down to ultra even, the game seemed to run more smoothly everywhere. So I ran it like that for a while, but it didn't seem perfect, and it was still kind of irritating to have to turn settings down for something that is a bug, basically, because it's just not utilizing it as it should. Another theory was that it was the latest NVIDIA drivers that just weren't working, because it all seemed to be similar graphics cards that had the problem. So I've rolled those back, and both of these kind of seem to work okay as a temporary solution. They at least get your frame rate not looking like a slideshow, which makes it playable, because it was basically not at all before. But it's definitely a bug, as it's not actually putting any load on anything, it's just dropping the utilization and the frame rate with that. so I don't really know why it's dropping to like just really low usage of graphics cards and then making your frames die because of it. So hopefully that'll be fixed at some point, but for now you can either adjust the deformable terrain setting or roll back your drivers if you're having the same issue, but it's just a bit of a pain, and I spent most of the campaign and the rally expansion trying to figure out how to fix this, so it kind of just ruined the experience for me. But yeah, let's hope they just fix it properly soon, because having to turn settings down when you go to the expansion and back up again when you go back to the mainlands, it just shouldn't be like that. It should just work. On a more general note, and not specifically the problems I've had on my PC, the release of this expansion does also seem to have brought with it waves of instability to the game on all platforms. Pretty much everyone I play with has experienced more game crashes recently. In fact, the other week on a stream, several of our games crashed simultaneously when we left an event on the Rally expansion. And they did bring out a hotfix a few days subsequent to the expansion's release, but they don't seem to have fixed the instability issues or the problems I mentioned earlier. So, yeah, they kind of did a fix for things that didn't need fixing, but haven't fixed some of the game-breaking things, which may be tougher to fix. I just hope they really do it at some point, because they have a habit of leaving things like this in the game forever. And those weren't the only issues. They messed up the release a bit as well. Luckily this next one didn't affect me or anyone I know, but they basically inadvertently gave access to Steam players a day early, so they could play the expansion when the main Series 19 update came out, which was a day before the Rally expansion was supposed to be available, which doesn't sound like much of a problem, right? They play it early, and good for people on Steam, but no, the Forza decided this couldn't happen, so they quickly reverted it, got rid of the update, but it then meant players on Steam couldn't play any of Forza Horizon 5 for 24 hours until the expansion was supposed to come out when they gave them another update. It's all sorted now, but somebody messed that up. Oops. And on that note, let's summarise what this expansion's actually been like. Despite ending on some negative points, overall I have actually really enjoyed the expansion. I do like the rally events, although it's kind of a shame that they're all sprints, and there's no circuits, not even the Goliath, which was a bit of a disappointment. We did, of course, also have a rally expansion on Horizon 1, which personally I never played, but it means both expansions, the Rally one and the Hot Wheels one, are recycled ideas from older games, although I'm not sure that really matters given how long ago those expansions came out. There aren't endless ideas. The campaign is fun, although it has incredibly annoying characters, as you might expect in Forza, and is far too short and quick to complete. We need a slightly longer and more challenging campaign, really. There is then more you can do, but it's forced on you, whether you want to complete it or not. You can't get rid of the pins, and when you do try to do it, it's easier, and the post-campaign challenges aren't really very challenging. They're just annoying and take an eternity to complete. There are 2 interesting and excellent vehicles in the expansion, but the rest are boring and irrelevant to rallying. They'd be fine in a Baja expansion, but they don't really fit in a rally expansion, and they're things personally I'm not that interested in. There's some cool new customization, but it's actually part of the base game, not the expansion, so you don't have to pay for the expansion to make use of that. As usual, there are all of the bugs and things which you get on Forza, some of them making it unplayable on PC until you adjust some things temporarily. Let's just hope they fix it properly later, and the general instability, because that just makes it not great. Seems to have made the whole game less stable, so I don't know what they've done, but let's hope that's fixed at some point. Like I say though, overall it's been a really enjoyable expansion, mostly because it has a brilliant map, which I maintain is the best thing about it. The map is absolutely fantastic. There's 2 things basically I love in this expansion: the map and Colin McRae's Ford Focus. So if you like either of those things, if you like tight twisty roads, rallying, and Colin McRae cars, then buy it, it's worth it. But yeah, there's not much else going for it. Has some good roads, has one good car, so if you want either of those, go and get it. But the events, the campaign, the brokenness of it isn't great. But yeah, like I say, overall I have enjoyed it despite all of those problems, just because it does have a fantastic map and one brilliant, brilliant car. And another one that I'm slightly interested, the Lightning pickup truck. But yeah, for today's video, giving my honest thoughts on the Forza Horizon 5 Rally expansion after playing through all of it and putting quite a lot of hours in, that is going to be all. So thank you very much for watching. Do let me know what you think of it, if you've played it, or whether you intend to get it or not based on what I've said, and I'll be back with the next video very soon.